Hello, everyone. I want to begin with a simple question. What if everything you're holding back from the world is actually the key to unlocking your greatest life? Today, I'm inviting you to step into a new reality. One where vulnerability isn't a liability, it's your superpower. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. In a world that celebrates toughness and self-reliance, we've been conditioned to believe that showing vulnerability means exposing a weakness, a crack in the armor. But what if I told you that vulnerability isn't the absence of strength, it's the purest form of it? Vulnerability is the act of standing in front of the world, your flaws and fears laid bare, and saying, "This is me." That takes a level of courage most people can't even fathom. We avoid vulnerability because it feels risky. It feels like an invitation for rejection or judgment. And yes, being vulnerable does open us up to hurt. But here's the paradox in avoiding vulnerability. We close ourselves off to the very things we crave: love, connection, understanding, and belonging. Vulnerability isn't what keeps us isolated. Fear is. Think about a moment when you felt truly connected to someone. Maybe it was during a late night conversation where you admitted something you'd been hiding. Or perhaps it was when someone else trusted you enough to share their truth. Those are the moments when connection is born, and they only happen in the presence of vulnerability. When we hide behind a mask of invincibility, we rob ourselves of those opportunities. Vulnerability isn't just about relationships, though it's also the foundation of creativity and innovation. Think of any artist, writer, or visionary whose work moved you deeply. Their brilliance didn't come from playing it safe. It came from exposing their inner world, their raw thoughts and feelings, knowing full well that not everyone would understand or appreciate it. Vulnerability is the fuel that drives courage. Every great accomplishment, every groundbreaking idea starts with the willingness to be vulnerable. This isn't to say vulnerability is easy. It's not. In fact, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. It's hard to admit you need help. It's hard to say "I don't know" when people expect you to have all the answers. It's hard to apologize, to forgive, to try again after you've failed. But what's the alternative? A life spent hiding. A life of playing small because you're too afraid to take a risk. That's not living, that's existing. Here's the thing about vulnerability, it's contagious. When you let your guard down, you give others permission to do the same. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room. Your courage illuminates the path for someone else. It creates a ripple effect, turning fear into connection, hesitation into trust. And yes, being vulnerable will sometimes lead to pain. You might open your heart to someone who doesn't handle it with care. But the alternative is living a life where you never open your heart at all, which is the bigger risk. Vulnerability isn't about avoiding hurt. It's about embracing life in its fullness, the joy, the pain, and everything in between. True strength isn't about never falling. It's about the courage to rise again and say, "I'm still here. I'm still me. And I'm enough." Authenticity is one of the most powerful forces in our lives, yet it is also one of the hardest to fully embrace. From a young age, we're taught how to fit in, how to conform, and how to shape ourselves into what others expect us to be. We internalize these lessons so deeply that we begin to believe the masks we wear are our true faces. But there's a cost to this charade, and it's a heavy one. Every time we sacrifice our authenticity to fit in, we lose a little piece of ourselves. The truth is, there's nothing more liberating than stepping into the world as your true self. Authenticity doesn't mean you'll never feel self-doubt or fear judgment. It means choosing to show up anyway. It's about owning who you are, your quirks, your imperfections, your dreams without apology. When you're authentic, you stop trying to meet impossible standards or live up to someone else's idea of success. You start living a life that feels true to you. And that's when everything changes. Authenticity is magnetic. When you're true to yourself, the people and opportunities that align with your values are naturally drawn to you. On the flip side, some people might drift away when you stop pretending to be what they want you to be. And that's okay. In fact, that's the point. Authenticity isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about finding the people and places where you belong. It's about creating a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. Living authentically takes courage because it means embracing all parts of yourself, the good, the messy, and the parts you're still working on. It requires you to silence the voice in your head that says, what if they don't like me? And replace it with, what if I like myself? It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. And when you show up real, you give others permission to do the same. Authenticity isn't just a personal virtue, it's a force for change. Think about the leaders, creators, and trailblazers who inspire us the most. They didn't get there by copying what everyone else was doing. They got there by daring to be different, by having the courage to say, this is who I am, and this is what I stand for. Authenticity inspires trust, and trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, whether it's with your team, your audience, or your loved ones. The world doesn't need more people who are perfect. It needs more people who are real. It needs your voice, your perspective, and your story. When you live authentically, you contribute something unique to the world that no one else can. You might not be everyone's cup of tea, but you'll be exactly what the right people need. Choosing authenticity isn't always easy, but it's always worth it, because at the end of the day, the greatest success you can achieve is knowing that you lived your life as your true self, unapologetically and wholeheartedly. Fear is one of the most universal human experiences. It's wired into us for survival, a protective mechanism designed to keep us safe. But in modern life, fear often oversteps its purpose. Instead of warning us about real, immediate danger, it becomes a wall between us and the lives we're meant to live. It whispers lies that keep us small, convincing us to stay in our comfort zones where it feels safe. But comfort zones, while familiar, are not where growth happens. They're not where courage lives. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward despite it. People often think brave individuals are fearless, but that's a myth. Fear exists even in the hearts of the boldest among us. The difference is that they don't let it rule them. They acknowledge fear, listen to it, and then choose to act anyway. Courage is not about being unafraid, it's about being afraid and taking the step forward regardless. Fear thrives on uncertainty. It fills the gaps with worst-case scenarios, convincing us that failure, rejection, or embarrassment will be unbearable. But courage begins when we challenge those assumptions. What if failure isn't the end but a lesson? What if rejection isn't a reflection of our worth, but a redirection towards something better? When we question fear's narratives, we strip it of its power. Moving from fear to courage doesn't require a grand leap. It begins with small acts of bravery, tiny moments where you choose to do the hard thing even though fear tells you not to. It's making the phone call you've been dreading, speaking up in a meeting when your heart is pounding, or saying yes to an opportunity even though self-doubt looms large. Each of these moments strengthens your courage muscles, proving to yourself that fear doesn't have the final say. Courage is also about reframing how we see failure. Fear tells us that failing is something to avoid at all costs, but the truth is, failure is not the enemy. It's a teacher, a necessary part of any worthwhile journey. Every great achievement is built on a foundation of missteps, lessons learned, and the courage to try again. The question is not whether you'll fail, it's how you'll respond when you do. Will you let it stop you, or will you use it as fuel to move forward? The shift from fear to courage doesn't mean fear disappears entirely. It means learning to carry it with you, to let it sit in the passenger seat instead of driving the car. It's about understanding that courage isn't about eliminating fear. It's about living a life where fear doesn't make your decisions for you. Courage is a choice. It's choosing to show up, to risk, to dare, even when fear tells you it's safer to stay hidden. It's the recognition that the life you want is on the other side of discomfort. And every time you choose courage over fear, you're not just reshaping your own life, you're creating a ripple effect, inspiring others to find their courage too. The most powerful stories in our lives are not the ones we hear from others, but the ones we tell ourselves. These internal narratives shape how we see the world, how we see others, and most importantly, how we see ourselves. They're the invisible scripts running in the background, influencing our decisions, relationships, and even our sense of worth. Yet we rarely pause to question these stories, to ask ourselves where they came from and whether they are even true. These stories are born out of experiences, moments of triumph, or more commonly, moments of pain. A childhood memory of being left out may evolve into a story of I'm not good enough. A failed relationship may turn into I'm unlovable. A mistake at work might feed the narrative of I'm not capable. These stories take root quietly, but over time they become the lenses through which we see the world. And once we believe them, they start to dictate our actions. When we tell ourselves that we're not good enough, we stop trying, we play small. We hesitate to speak up or take risks because we're afraid of confirming the very story we're running from. If we believe we're unlovable, we may push people away, sabotaging relationships out of fear of being hurt. These stories, though often unspoken, have incredible power to limit us. But here's the truth. These stories are not facts. They are interpretations shaped by our perceptions and fears. And the beautiful thing about interpretations is that they can be rewritten. The process starts with awareness, recognizing the story for what it is. Ask yourself, what story am I telling right now? Where did it come from? Is it based on evidence, or is it rooted in fear and self-doubt? When we bring these narratives into the light, we begin to see them for what they are, constructs, not truths. Rewriting the stories we tell ourselves takes courage and intentionality. It's about choosing to challenge the narrative. Instead of I'm not good enough, we can say I'm learning and growing, and that's enough. Instead of I'm unlovable, we can remind ourselves I am worthy of love and connection, just as I am. This isn't about ignoring our struggles or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing a perspective that empowers us rather than one that holds us back. Every time you rewrite a story, you create a new possibility for your life. You give yourself permission to dream bigger, to take risks, to show up as your authentic self. You begin to see that you are not defined by your past or by the moments that tried to break you. You are defined by the way you rise, the way you keep moving forward, the way you decide to live your life. The stories we tell ourselves are powerful, but we are the authors. At any moment, we can pick up the pen and write something new. And when we do, we open the door to a life that's no longer limited by fear or doubt, but fueled by courage and possibility. Failure is one of life's most effective, albeit uncomfortable teachers. Yet, for many of us, failure feels like an end, a sign that we weren't good enough, that we should give up or retreat into safer, smaller spaces. But the truth is, failure is not the enemy of success. It is the foundation of resilience. It's not about whether or not you fail, it's about how you respond when you do. Every stumble, every setback, every misstep has the potential to shape us into stronger, wiser, and more capable versions of ourselves. When we experience failure, our first instinct is often to avoid it, deny it, or let it define us. We might tell ourselves stories like, I'm just not cut out for this, or maybe I should lower my expectations. These narratives can keep us trapped, afraid to try again. But failure isn't a reflection of our worth. It's evidence that we're daring to step into the arena. If you've never failed, it likely means you've never truly challenged yourself, never pushed beyond what's comfortable or easy. Failure strips away illusions. It shows us where our weaknesses lie, where we need to grow, and what isn't working. It provides clarity, even when it feels like chaos. When we embrace failure as a tool rather than a verdict, we can begin to see it for what it truly is, feedback. It's not personal, it's data. It's a guidepost pointing us toward a better path, a stronger strategy, or a new approach. The most successful people in the world didn't avoid failure, they learned to listen to it. Resilience is built in the moments after failure. It's the decision to stand back up, to try again, to face the discomfort of not getting it right the first time. Every time you get up after a fall, you're not just moving closer to your goals, you're proving to yourself that you can. That self-belief, that grit becomes the foundation of resilience. Resilience doesn't mean you won't feel pain or disappointment. It means you've learned to move through it rather than letting it stop you. One of the most powerful shifts we can make is to stop fearing failure and start welcoming it as a natural part of growth. Think about a toddler learning to walk. They don't get it right on the first try or the 10th. They fall over and over, but they don't quit. They keep trying, wobbling and stumbling until one day they're running. Failure, in its purest form, is practice. It's the process of refining our skills, deepening our understanding, and building the resilience that will carry us through future challenges. When we look back on our lives, it's often the moments of failure that taught us the most, that shaped us into who we are today. Those moments, painful as they might have been, gave us strength, perspective, and the courage to keep going. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's the stepping stone to it. It's a reminder that progress is messy, that growth takes time, and that resilience is built not in avoiding failure, but in rising from it. Empathy is one of the most profound and transformative tools we have for building connection and understanding in a world that often feels divided. It's the ability to step into someone else's shoes, to feel with them, and to see the world through their eyes. Empathy doesn't mean you have to fix someone's problems or agree with their perspective. It means you are willing to sit with them in their reality, offering presence and understanding without judgment. In a fast-paced, often self-centered world, it's easy to overlook the importance of empathy. We're quick to judge, to make assumptions, to label people based on limited information. But when we approach others with empathy, something remarkable happens. We begin to see their humanity, their struggles, and their hopes. Empathy becomes a bridge between us and them, breaking down walls of misunderstanding and replacing them with trust and connection. Empathy is not about having all the answers to saying the perfect thing. Sometimes the most empathetic act is simply being there, listening without interrupting, holding space for someone's emotions without trying to change them. It's the quiet reassurance that says you're not alone. I may not have experienced what you're going through, but I'm here with you in this moment. This kind of connection is healing. It reminds us that even in our darkest times, we are seen and valued. Empathy also requires humility. It's recognizing that our perspective isn't the only one, that our experiences don't define the full range of human truth. This humility allows us to approach others with curiosity rather than judgment, to ask questions like, what's it like for you? Or how can I support you? Instead of assuming we already know. It's in these moments of genuine inquiry that the bridge of empathy becomes strongest. Empathy is the glue that holds us together through challenges. When disagreements arise, empathy allows us to move beyond the surface issues and understand the emotions driving them. Instead of seeing a partner's anger or frustration as an attack, empathy helps us see the hurt or fear beneath it. Instead of dismissing a friend's struggles as overreactions, empathy reminds us that their feelings are valid, even if their experiences differ from our own. Empathy isn't just a personal virtue, it's a force for societal change. Imagine how much conflict could be eased if we all made an effort to truly understand one another. It's hard to hate someone when you've taken the time to understand their story, their fears, and their dreams. Empathy doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, but it creates a foundation of mutual respect where productive dialogue becomes possible. Empathy is a reminder that we are all connected. Our struggles may differ, but our need for understanding, kindness, and connection is universal. When we choose empathy, we choose to see each other as human beings first, to recognize the dignity in every person we encounter. And in doing so, we create a world that is not just more compassionate, but also more hopeful and united. Owning your worth is one of the most transformative decisions you can make in your life. It's not about arrogance or overconfidence. It's about recognizing and honoring the inherent value you bring to the world simply by being yourself. Too often, we tie our worth to external achievements, other people's opinions, or societal standards that constantly shift. But true self-worth doesn't come from these fleeting sources. It comes from within. It's the unshakable belief that you are enough just as you are, regardless of what the world might say. Many of us spend years, sometimes decades, seeking validation from others. We chase approval, hoping it will finally make us feel worthy. We achieve milestones, gather accolades, or bend ourselves into shapes that we think others will admire. But the truth is, no amount of external validation can fill the void if we don't first believe in our own worth. Seeking worthiness from the outside is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom that will never be enough. Owning your worth means stepping away from the need for constant validation and reclaiming your sense of self. It's about silencing the critical voice in your head that tells you you're not smart enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough. That voice isn't your truth. It's a reflection of societal pressures, past experiences, and fear. When you own your worth, you stop letting that voice dictate your decisions or diminish your confidence. Instead, you replace it with a kinder, more empowering narrative. I am enough, exactly as I am. This shift is not easy. Many of us carry wounds from childhood, relationships, or failures that made us question our value. Owning your worth doesn't mean pretending those wounds don't exist. It means acknowledging them and choosing to heal. It's about recognizing that your scars are not signs of weakness, but evidence of your resilience. They're proof that you face challenges and come out stronger on the other side. When you own your worth, you begin to set healthier boundaries. You stop saying yes to things that drain you or compromise your values just to avoid disappointing others. You recognize that your time, energy, and well-being are valuable, and you protect them. This doesn't make you selfish, it makes you self-respecting. You can't pour from an empty cup, and owning your worth ensures that you prioritize filling your own before giving to others. Owning your worth also means stepping into opportunities with confidence. It's knowing that you deserve to be in the room, that your voice matters, and that your unique perspective adds value. You stop playing small or apologizing for taking up space. Instead, you embrace your potential and pursue your goals unapologetically. Not because you have to prove anything to anyone, but because you know you're capable and deserving. Owning your worth transforms not only how you see yourself, but also how others see and treat you. When you value yourself, you teach the world to do the same. You inspire others to recognize their own worth, creating a ripple effect of confidence and empowerment. And most importantly, you live a life that reflects your truth, a life where you no longer seek permission to be enough because you know that you already are.